I'm David Bachner of Guelph, Ontario, and I get my weekly radio news on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It's Sunday, July the 20th, 2025. We thank you for tuning in to our show. My name's Sheldon. I am here with Jill, and we have a whole bunch of stories for you today. 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. We have some stories from Canada, the US, and a few overseas stories from Africa and Australia, and news of a big amateur radio event coming up next weekend. So we'll have details on that for you as well. We will start off here in Canada, in the Prairie Province of Manitoba. We thank Mickey Delmage of Sherwood Park, Alberta, for sending us this story from the Winnipeg Free Press. The headline, Swan River radio station struck by arson. Owner believes it's due to a Facebook post. Mounties are searching for a suspect seen outside a Swan River radio station shortly before the building was firebombed early Thursday. Police in the town, some 375 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg, responded to reports of a fire at a business on the 500 block of Main Street around 5:20 a.m., Manitoba RCMP said in a news release Friday. Officers encountered heavy smoke and the building's interior was significantly damaged, police said. With assistance from a fire investigator, the preliminary investigation has determined the cause of the fire to be incendiary. Investigators recovered video surveillance from nearby cameras that show an unknown man riding a bike past the business right before the fire broke out. Bill Gade, owner of CJ104 of the Swan Valley West, said pretty much all of the station is destroyed. Gade said the first employee usually starts work at 5 a.m., but the substitute worker schedule for Thursday was coming in late. There just would have been no way out. And if they got out, they would have been burning. They would have been covered in burning gas. There's just nothing they could have done, he said. I've seen the videos, the entire room splashed with burning gas. Gade said he believes the attack is linked to a Facebook post made by the station last week, which received backlash from the community. The post was about a 29-year-old who died in a car crash on Canada Day, and it included his criminal history. The man was in a vehicle traveling southbound on Highway 10 that hit another vehicle, whose two occupants died. They were identified as Royal Canoe bassist Brendan Berg and his partner Olivia Michalchuk. A large portion of the more than 400 comments on the post were critical that it had mentioned the man's extensive history with the justice system. Gade defended the post by saying that that's how news is covered, that if Bill Cosby died, news outlets wouldn't just report on his acting fame, they would also mention his criminal history. He said he never thought he'd be attacked over a social media post. It's absolutely horrible, he said. There's just no words to describe how bad it is. RCMP Media Relations Officer Sergeant Paul Menegra said it's too early to comment on the motive for the fire attack and police are still investigating. This particular incident itself is a little bit unique as far as the cause of the fire. It's not a common occurrence, really anywhere in Manitoba, he said. Gade said the studio is where the Mark and Bill morning show is produced each weekday and aired on stations in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The studio and master control facilities for stations in Neepawa, Gimli, Virden, and Esterhazy, Saskatchewan were ruined. Lots of it is melted, but the stuff that isn't melted, we're trying to at least get some of it to turn on so we can get some signals on some of these stations, because right now the whole network is off. Computer servers for Parkland Tourism, the Swan Valley Chamber of Commerce, and nonprofit groups were also destroyed. Gade said he hopes the stations will be back on the air by the end of the weekend. The business always carries replacement equipment for one station because lightning can hit a transmitter at any time. So that's pretty dramatic. a follow-up on a Facebook post that somebody would go to that extent to set not just the radio station but other facilities in that same building on fire. And fortunately, not people in the building at the time, it seems.
Yeah, it shows that now this is an extreme case, but it also shows that you're going to have to be careful what you say or what you post on social media, because you never know what would happen. In our next story, a letter to the editor. NOAA weather radios have a crucial role to play. This is by Adrienne Abbott to Radio World. Note, the author is the former chair of the Nevada State Emergency Communications Committee. Have we learned a lesson from the tragedy in Texas? One lesson to consider: it doesn't matter if you have the best warning system in the world. It's no good if no one has a way to receive that warning. People on a weekend getaway or vacation also want to escape their electronics. Not just cell phones, the internet, and social media, but also TVs and radios. They want to get away from the constant barrage of controversies, catastrophes, and yes, even weather reports. However, Texas is subject to all types of weather disasters: hurricanes, tornadoes, damaging winds, storms, and flash floods. And it's not the only place in the country on the receiving end of bad weather events. Knowing this, there's no excuse for the operators of any campground, and especially a children's campground, to not have a properly programmed and set up NOAA weather radio. It's the only device that can sit quietly on a shelf in off mode and still receive alerts from the National Weather Service and make obnoxious noises at dark 100 to wake you up and save your life and the lives of your campers. Kids should not have to be awakened by water seeping into their sleeping bags and then have to find a way in the dark to escape their flooded cabins. FEMA and the National Weather Service used to have grant funds available to supply NOAA weather radios for schools, hospitals, assisted living homes, and other vulnerable facilities. It's concerning that these funds are no longer available, especially when the radios cost less than $40 each. People in the Midwest are very familiar with NOAA weather radios. They own them and use them, and have them in schools and hospitals and other critical places. And they heed the alerts and lives are saved. But NOAA weather radios aren't that common outside Tornado Alley. In fact, the FCC doesn't require that radio and TV stations have these radios as part of their emergency alert system equipment. Although many stations do and rebroadcast certain weather alerts, but we broadcasters seldom mention the ubiquitous NOAA weather radio in our coverage or meteorological events. After all, it's sort of competition for our audience. It's time for things to change. While the Texas tragedy is still unfolding on our TVs and radios, broadcasters need to encourage our audiences to lobby Congress to restore grant funds for local National Weather Service offices and local emergency managers to acquire and distribute NOAA weather radios to schools, hospitals, assisted living homes, and community facilities like senior centers and even campgrounds. We raise funds for the Kerrville survivors. We can raise congressional awareness of this gap in the public warning process. While we're at it, we broadcasters should work with the National Association of Broadcasters to partner with the National Weather Service and FEMA to develop a public service announcement campaign telling the public about the benefits of owning a NOAA weather radio. It may not be the world's best warning system, but it could save your life. Indeed, I don't understand why all of these places do not have, as they say, a little silent NOAA weather radio in some corner of the building that will sound that alarm if bad weather comes your way.
Yeah, it's really surprising, but I guess in some ways we keep seeing that, younger people don't know much about radio. They don't use radio. They're the last thing they're going to think of is a weather radio. Somebody really has to explain it, and maybe the public service announcements about it, particularly in areas that get affected by these types of disasters, should start doing that. It would certainly benefit a lot of people, and I think a lot of lives could have been saved had they had an early warning system available to them in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our next story comes from Inside Radio. A new poll finds bipartisan support for federal public radio funding. A new Harris poll conducted on behalf of NPR shows strong bipartisan support for public radio, both in terms of federal funding and its role in emergency communication. According to the survey, 66% of Americans agree that public radio should receive federal funding, and the same percentage say that funding represents good value for taxpayer dollars. That support crosses party lines, with 58% of Republicans and 77% of Democrats in favor of continued federal investments in public radio. When asked whether it offers good value, 59% of Republicans and 76% of Democrats agreed. The poll, conducted last week, also shows broad public reliance on public radio in times of crisis. Nearly three-quarters of respondents, 73%, said they depend on public radio emergency alerts and news for public safety, including 77% of Republicans and 78% of Democrats. Awareness and usage of public radio remains high. 70% of Americans are familiar with public radio, and 35% reporting that they are very or extremely familiar. More than 1 in 3 Americans, 36%, use public radio at least once a week, including 36% of Republicans and 40% of Democrats. Americans also value and trust public radio as a community resource. 71% said public radio provides a valuable service to their community. 64% of Republicans, 81% of Democrats, and 69% said they trust or would trust the news and information they receive from public radio. 62% of Republicans and 81% of Democrats. The survey was conducted online within the U.S. by the Harris poll on behalf of NPR from July 9th to the 11th among 2,089 U.S. adults ages 18 and older. So explain to me why we've just heard that the funding to public broadcasting is going to be cut.
I think this is the perfect example of political disconnect from the reality, where you want to go in a political direction but not listen to what people want.
Even people who voted for you.
Yep.
Those numbers, as they say, are across party lines. They're both, both parties, people who recognize and identify themselves as Democrat or Republican, are talking about and praising the service of public radio, yet the government is deciding, no, this is money we can save and we don't need to fund these places. They can take care of themselves. So I don't know. It's kind of a stalemate, but right now it certainly looks like these stations are going to have to fund for themselves, as the vote just recently came in within the last day or so.
It's funny because it kind of reminds me of similar stories of stations in other countries around the world. A couple of countries in Africa we talked about where the government is trying to silence some voices on the radio because they're not telling the stories they would like. In our next story, we have a South Florida pirate that claims the FCC fine is legally unjustified. This is by Nick Langan of Radio World. The constitutionality of the FCC's ability to levy substantial financial penalties without a jury trial is at the heart of a new petition filed by Fabrice Polinis, also known as South Florida pirate operator DJ Paz. Polinis is challenging the Commission's $2.4 million forfeiture against him, arguing that the penalty is not only beyond his financial means, but also violates his Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial a claim that he believes is bolstered by recent landmark court decisions. He is being fined for operating a radio touche douce from North Miami in February and March of 2023, though the commission cited his operation of the station since at least 2012. We noted the response Polynice submitted to the commission's notice of apparent liability, which was initially proposed in early 2024. The FCC said it did not contest having run Radio Touche Douce, only that he was unable to pay. He later provided tax returns to support his case. His gross adjusted income from 2021 to 2023, according to the tax returns he submitted, was less than $16,000 in each of those 3 years. However, the Commission rejected Polynice's request for forfeiture reduction, citing the egregiousness of his violations. It said he continued to operate the station even after U.S. Marshals seized his broadcast equipment. In the subsequent petition filed on July 7th, Polynice's attorney, Dan J. Albert, argued that the $2.4 million is grossly in excess of his ability to pay. But in addition to challenging his financial wherewithal, Polynice questioned the legal standing to impose civil penalties without a jury trial. The one thing that the FCC fails to address, however, is the questionability of its ability to impose the forfeiture under recent court decisions restricting that ability at this time. An unlicensed radio operator has never successfully won a legal challenge against the Commission, though lighter financial penalties have been agreed upon. But the ongoing legal landscape looks to test the traditional boundaries of its enforcement. You know, this is interesting because we always talk about, do they get the money when they're actually asking for these fines? And now not only they're not getting the money, but they have someone that says, no, I don't owe you that money. That doesn't work this way. And he's trying to challenge them.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You know, the guy's claiming that he earns $16,000 a year for the last 3 years. Maybe he should be doing something other than broadcasting a pirate radio station. Like, how is he making a living? I don't think he's making it from pirate radio, but yeah, I mean, you know, the laws are pretty clear that you can't run an illegal radio station. And, you know, the law has been passed that they can dish out these fines. But like you say, you know, who's got $2.4 million kicking around that they can pay off these fines? I mean, it's pretty crazy. I would think if you lowered that amount to, you know, something reasonable that people can pay, they're going to pay it. You know, if you threaten them with increasing it each time they don't pay it, maybe that would work. But hitting $2.4 million right off the top is just, you know, I don't think anybody's going to pay that.
And the worst part of it is what it seems to be is you look at these radio stations on the air and they get these fines, they get all of these FCC warnings, and yet they still seem to be on the air. They kind of just challenge the FCC, basically.
Yeah, well, this guy, they go back, as far as 2011, did they say that they've known about this guy?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's a pretty strange story. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. Does it go to court? Does he get his jury trial? How's he going to defend himself?
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, I ran an illegal radio station. Well, you did something illegal. You should pay some kind of penalty for that, you know?
So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is quite active. It has a lot of little sunspots, but not too much flaring. But there was a huge canyon of fire, basically, that erupted on the sun. It was pretty amazing. If you go on spaceweather.com and look at the postings, you'll even see the image of that enormous canyon kind of collapsing on the sun, which is pretty amazing to see. There are several sunspots that are capable of M-class, if not X-class solar flares to look at in the days ahead. So this is going to be interesting to examine. And we've learned this week that we have passed solar maximum, solar cycle 25. So don't worry. You know what? Propagation is going to be good for the next years. Decline takes years to happen until we reach solar minimum, which is not to happen before 2030. So enjoy the propagation when it's there. Sunspot number 178, solar flux 156. Well, what's to look at is the possibility of flaring on the sun that could disrupt communications, but hopefully it's not going to be too bad, and that conditions can be at least good enough for some interesting radio propagation. And the way to witness all of this is to turn on a radio and listen.
Hello, I'm Saul Brody from Philadelphia, PA, USA. You're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
We move to West Africa with a story from Radio Info Africa. A very positive story, I think. West African radio stations champion peace journalism movement. Radio stations across West Africa are increasingly embracing peace journalism as a powerful tool to promote unity, resolve community disputes, and counter misinformation. Leading the shift is Radio Peace 88.9 FM in Ghana's central region, which has used community-focused programming since 1999 to address local disputes and promote dialogue. Station manager David Kwesi Garte Tago said their participatory approach has reduced tensions during major cultural events and helped restore harmony. In Nigeria, the Kaduna State Media Corporation recently launched peace-centered radio programs to de-escalate tensions after violence in Plateau State. With 5 stations broadcasting in local languages, they reach millions with messages of peace and social cohesion. In Cameroon, peace journalism is gaining traction as well. The Voice of Manyo Radio once helped settle land disputes through factual, community-based reporting. Media leaders there, including Dash TV's Peter Nsosli, are now designing peace journalism frameworks for broader use. Despite challenges such as limited resources and security threats, broadcasters across the region believe radio's trusted reach makes it the ideal platform for building peace. As Nananoms FM Mohammed's Umar Al-Hussein puts it, the world has seen enough of conflict. Radio can help us change the story. So that's a really positive story, I think. At least 3 separate countries deciding that radio can be used for a good thing and try to promote peace and negotiations and reducing tensions.
And God knows we need a lot of that today. So we have DX Target. Australia's Radio 567 is back on the air again on 4970 kilohertz via Ron Howard, Monterey, California, via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio I.O. group. So from Australia, 4970 Radio 567, broadcasting from Wee-Waa, New South Wales, from 1320 to 1350 UTC, heard on July 14th via a Kiwi SDR remote at Hunter Valley, New South Wales. Station had been off the air for about a month with antenna issues. Thanks very much to Craig Seeger for the timely alert. Playing the usual nice selections of 50s, 60s, and 70s songs, heard with some QRN, frequent IDs. Great to have Peter Tate's station back again. So there's a website where you can go and listen to it, radio567.com.au. It describes the station as a welcome to a place where the 50s, 60s, and 70s live on. Radio 567 is mostly about the rock and roll from these decades. You will hear 70s disco and some 80s rockabilly. We are aware of the disco sucks era, however, we think it was a bit unfair. Since we covered these 3 decades, it was decided that they should all be included. We hope you enjoy Radio 567, Rock and Roll Memories, and Disco. and so this is nice and pretty good catch if you're able to hear it.
Yeah, good to have news of a station returning to shortwave, and this will be one for the DXers out there. It's probably low powered, and you've got to, really look for conditions to be right to the South Pacific into Australia. So give it a try. You may hear Radio 567. Again, the frequency 4970 kilohertz. And finally, we have an obituary, sad news. This is via Victor Gunatelika in Sri Lanka, who writes about a friend of his, George Jacobs. Victor reports the passing of an icon of American international broadcasting on July the 2nd. George Jacobs was the chief of frequency planning and engineering in the great decades of shortwave broadcasting of the Voice of America. He was also an amateur radio operator, Whiskey 3 Alpha Sierra Kilo, and for many years was the propagation editor for CQ magazine. He also wrote the yearly review of radio propagation for the World Radio TV Handbook, and he authored many books on radio wave propagation. So sad to hear of the passing of George Jacobs, a name that I think most people in the DXing hobby would be familiar with.
So we have some, actually a big contest coming up.
Yeah, we talked about a few stations last week that were getting ready for this event, so we thought we'd talk a little bit more about it today. It is the Radio Society of Great Britain's Islands on the Air contest, and it'll run 1200 Zulu July 26th to 1200 Zulu July 27th. And it is they call it the contest that is the most popular contest in the RSGB's HF Contest calendar, attracting entries from around the world. The IOTA Contest, using the Islands on the Air concept, was created in 1993. This is now a major international event, attracting thousands of participants from all over the world. Radio amateurs will be traveling to islands around the globe and putting them on the air, making contacts with other islands and with those who are chasing those islands. So the objective, to promote contacts between stations in IOTA island groups and the rest of the world, and to encourage expeditions to IOTA islands. So it'll be on 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz bands, CW and or SSB, and stations send a signal report and a serial number, with stations on the island sending their IOTA reference number. And the IOTA website, iota-world.org, has a full list of the IOTA islands around the planet and other information relating to the IOTA program. So this is a big deal. It's people put a lot of effort into this. They head off to very remote spots around the planet. We've talked about some of these islands in the past. We had to go look them up to see where they were. We'd never heard of them before.
It's definitely a great contest to hear places you never hear, and maybe you'll never hear again. Some of them might be unique just for this year and never come back. Who knows? This is really fun, even as a listener.
Yeah, there are very specific criteria for what qualifies, I should say, as an IOTA island. We live in Montreal, and we thought, well, Montreal's an island. Is it an IOTA island? It is not. The islands have to be a certain distance away from mainland, and a whole bunch, which you can read about on the IOTA website. But as Jill said, there'll be a lot of small places, little dots in the water around the planet that will have a few ham radio operators on them for this 24-hour period, July 26th and July 27th. So check it out.
Yeah, and check out the week before. Often they arrive early and they test out their equipment a little bit, and they make contacts just to get the hang of it so that they'll be ready for the contest. So even the week before, you'll have some of these stations on the air. Going to be a lot of fun to either listen, or if you're ham, make some contacts and have fun. So we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed all of these stories. If you have anything to report to us or any comments about the show, you can email us, radioreport@yahoo.com. Our program is live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, we want to welcome Thomas David Hood of Fayetteville, Ohio, joining the Facebook group this week. Look for us on Facebook, International Radio Report. And our YouTube channel is available to you anytime to check out our program. We post all of our shows there. So go to youtube.com/@IRR to find us, and you can subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next Sunday here on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
راديو مونتي كارلو يوصل على مستمعيه في الدوحة على موجة الFM